The violent crack of a gunshot echoed through the frigid January air. As Olivia Turner fled into the night, her breath clouding before her like the ghost of a scream she dared not release. Blood stained the pristine snow beneath her boots, not hers, but evidence of what she'd done to escape the man who had promised to love and cherish her 5 years ago. Dallas, Texas. 1878 was not a place Olivia had ever expected to flee from. The sprawling cattle town had become her prison, her husband its merciless warden. As she stumbled through knee-deep snow during the worst winter storm to hit Texas in decades, she knew that with each footprint she left behind, she was marking a trail for Jeremiah to follow, a trail that would lead him straight to her, and to the vengeance he had sworn. Olivia's fingers clutched the small leather pouch containing the money she'd stolen from Jeremiah's lockbox, her only chance at a new beginning. The wind howled, cutting through her wool coat as if it were made of gossamer. Her feet grew numb, and her tears froze against her cheeks. Still, she pushed onward, leaving Dallas behind, heading north toward the promise of anonymity. The knife she'd plunged into Jeremiah's shoulder would buy her time, but not enough. He would come for her, of that she was certain. He would track her through this storm and drag her back to the life. She could no longer endure a life of bruises hidden beneath high-necked dresses and excuses murmured to concerned neighbors. Night had fallen completely when Olivia's strength finally gave out. She collapsed against the trunk of a barren oak tree, miles from the nearest homestead. The snow had begun to fall more heavily, and she watched as it slowly covered her tracks behind her. It wasn't enough. The trail was too fresh, too obvious. Come morning, Jeremiah would find her. "Madam, you're bleeding." The voice startled her so badly she nearly screamed. Olivia scrambled backward, fumbling for the small derringer hidden in her coat pocket. "Easy now. I'm not here to harm you." The man stepped forward, his tall frame illuminated by the lantern he carried. "Name's Patrick Sloan. I was tracking a wounded wolf when I came across your trail." He was dressed like a cowboy, worn leather chaps over denim trousers, a heavy sheepskin coat, and a wide-brimmed hat dusted with snow. In the lantern light, she could see a face weathered by sun and wind, but with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He couldn't have been much older than 30. "Stay back," Olivia warned, her voice hoarse from cold and fear. The derringer shook in her hand. Patrick raised his hand slowly. "You're in trouble. I can see that plain enough, and you'll freeze to death out here before morning." He gestured to her arm. "That's your blood on the snow, madam. Let me help you." Olivia glanced down, noticing for the first time the tear in her sleeve where Jeremiah's hunting knife had caught her as she fled. The adrenaline had masked the pain until now. "I can't go back," she whispered, the derringer still trained on him though her arm was growing heavy. Patrick's gaze followed her footprints stretching back through the darkness. "Someone's after you." It wasn't a question. "My husband." The word tasted bitter on her tongue. Understanding dawned in Patrick's eyes. He looked at her steadily, then at the sky where snow continued to fall. "I have a cabin about 2 miles north of here. You need shelter and that cut needs tending." He paused, then added, "And I can cover your tracks." Olivia hesitated, her instincts screaming both to run and to trust. "Why would you help me?" Patrick's expression darkened. "I had a sister once." "She didn't run far enough." He turned and whistled softly. A moment later, a dappled gray horse emerged from the trees. "I'll walk, you ride, and I'll take care of the trail." Too exhausted to argue further, Olivia allowed him to help her onto his horse. As they moved forward, Patrick followed behind, methodically sweeping fresh snow over her footprints with a pine bough he'd broken from a tree. Every few yards, he would veer off, creating false trails before returning to continue covering the true path. "He won't find you," Patrick said quietly as he worked. "Not tonight. Not ever, if I have anything to say about it." As they traveled through the night, Olivia watched this stranger meticulously erasing all evidence of her passage. With each sweep of the pine bough, Patrick Sloan was giving her something she hadn't dared hope for, a chance. The cabin appeared like a mirage through the falling snow, small but solid, with smoke curling from the stone chimney. Patrick led her inside, where the warmth hit her like a physical force. A fire crackled in the hearth, and simple furnishing spoke of a solitary life. "Sit," he commanded gently, gesturing to a chair by the fire. "Let me see that arm." Olivia sank down gratefully as Patrick rummaged through a trunk, producing clean bandages and a bottle of whiskey. "This will sting," he warned, before pouring a measure over her wound. Olivia bit her lip to keep from crying out. His hands were large but surprisingly gentle as he cleaned and bandaged her arm. "You live alone out here?" she asked, trying to distract herself from the pain. Patrick nodded. "For 3 years now. I work for the Rockingham Ranch during spring and summer. Come winter, I trap and hunt, keep to myself mostly." He finished securing the bandage. "That should hold. Thank you." Olivia met his gaze. "I can't pay you much, but I have some money." "I don't want your money," Patrick replied firmly. "Just rest. We'll figure things out in the morning." He moved away, hanging up his coat and hat before preparing a simple meal of beans and dried venison. Olivia watched him, studying the way he moved with quiet efficiency around the small space. There was nothing threatening in his manner, yet she sensed a strength about him that had nothing to do with his physical build. "You're safe here," Patrick said, as if reading her thoughts. "I'll sleep by the door. No one will get past me." After they ate, Patrick made up a bed for her on his narrow cot, insisting he would be fine on the floor near the hearth. Exhaustion overcame Olivia's wariness, and she fell into a deep, dreamless sleep for the first time in months. She woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Patrick moving quietly around the cabin. Sunlight streamed through the window, reflecting off the snow outside. For a moment, panic seized her. Daylight meant Jeremiah could track her, but then she remembered Patrick's work the night before, meticulously covering her trail. "Morning," Patrick greeted, handing her a steaming cup. "Storm's past, but the snow's deep. We're safe here for now." Olivia sipped the coffee gratefully. "I can't stay, I need to keep moving." "Where are you headed?" Patrick asked, settling into a chair opposite her. Olivia looked down at her cup. "I don't know, away from Dallas, away from him." She hesitated, then added, "I stabbed him before I left." "He'll be looking for me." Patrick didn't flinch at her confession. "Was it self-defense?" "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "He was going to kill me. He's been threatening it for months." Unconsciously, her hand went to her throat where fading bruises marked Jeremiah's last attempt. Patrick's jaw tightened as he noticed the marks. "Then you did what you had to do." "The sheriff won't see it that way. Jeremiah has friends in town, connections. I'm just the wife who couldn't keep her husband happy." Bitterness crept into her voice. 5 years I endured it, telling myself it would get better, that he would change." "They never change," Patrick said quietly. They fell silent, the crackling fire the only sound in the cabin. Finally, Patrick spoke again. "You can stay here until spring if you need to." "No one comes this way in winter." Olivia stared at him. "You would do that for a stranger. How do you know I'm telling the truth? I could be running from the law for all you know." A small smile touched Patrick's lips. "I'm a fair judge of character, Mrs. Turner," she supplied. "Olivia Turner. Mrs. Turner, I believe you, and I'm offering you sanctuary until you decide your next move." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Sloan." "Patrick," he corrected gently. "And you're welcome, Olivia." The days that followed settled into an unexpectedly peaceful rhythm. Patrick went out each morning to check his traps and hunt, always careful to cover any sign of his comings and goings near the cabin. Olivia took over the cooking and mending, grateful to have useful tasks to occupy her mind. They learned about each other in the quiet evenings by the fire. Patrick told her about growing up in Missouri, about his sister Martha, who had married a man who beat her until one night he went too far. About his time as a cowboy, driving cattle from Texas to Kansas, and how he'd saved enough to buy this small piece of land far from town. In return, Olivia shared her own story. She had come to Dallas as a teacher in 1873, full of hope and ambition. Jeremiah Turner had been charming, then the successful owner of a mercantile store who courted her with poetry and promises. The change had been gradual, at first controlling behavior disguised as concern, isolation disguised as devotion. By the time the physical abuse began, Olivia was already trapped, cut off from friends and family. "I should have left sooner," she confessed one night, staring into the fire. "You left when you could," Patrick replied. "That's what matters." A week passed, then two. No sign of pursuit came, but Olivia remained vigilant, startling at unfamiliar sounds and watching the horizon when she ventured outside. Patrick assured her repeatedly that no one could have followed their trail that night, that the fresh snowfall had been their ally. On a clear February afternoon, Patrick returned from checking his traps with news that made Olivia's blood run cold. "There's a man asking questions in the settlement to the east," he said, stamping snow from his boots. "Described a woman matching your appearance. Said she's his wife, that she's unwell and ran off during a fever." Olivia's hands trembled as she set down the shirt she'd been mending. "Jeremiah," Patrick nodded grimly. "Most likely, he's offering a reward for information. I need to go." Olivia rose quickly, already mentally cataloging the few possessions she'd accumulated. "If he finds me here, he'll kill us both." "Sit down, Olivia," Patrick said firmly. "No one in these parts knows about you, and even if this man comes this way, he won't find you." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've been preparing for this possibility." Patrick pulled out a map from his coat pocket and spread it on the table. "See here. I've been laying false trails all over these hills, wearing your boots to make tracks, then covering them partially as if you're trying to hide them but doing a poor job. They all lead away from here, toward the north and west." Olivia stared at him, amazed by his foresight. "You've been doing this all along. I promised you'd be safe," Patrick said simply. "I keep my promises." That night, as the wind howled outside, Olivia found herself unable to sleep. She sat by the fire, listening to Patrick's steady breathing from his bedroll by the door. In the weeks they'd spent together, she'd come to rely on his quiet strength, his unwavering support. And something else had grown between them, something she wasn't ready to name but felt all the same. "You should be sleeping." Patrick's voice came softly through the darkness. "I can't," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him finding us." Patrick sat up, his silhouette outlined by the dying firelight. "He won't find us, Olivia." "How can you be so certain?" "Because I won't let him." The simple conviction in his voice should have seemed naive, but instead it comforted her. Olivia pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Why are you doing all this for me, Patrick?" "The truth." He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "Then, when my sister died, I wasn't there to protect her. I was working a cattle drive in Kansas. By the time I got the news and returned home, she'd been in the ground for 2 weeks. His voice remained steady, but Olivia could hear the pain beneath the words. "I tracked down her husband. Found him in a saloon in Springfield, bragging about how he'd disciplined his wife." Olivia held her breath, sensing where this story was heading. "I didn't kill him," Patrick continued, surprising her. though God knows I wanted to. Instead, I broke both his hands so he'd never hit another woman, then turned him over to the sheriff with witnesses to his confession. He stoked the fire, sending sparks up the chimney. I couldn't save Martha. But when I found you in the snow that night, following your tracks and seeing you were running from something terrible, I thought maybe this was my chance to do right by someone else. Olivia moved from her chair to kneel beside him. In the firelight, she could see the sincerity in his eyes, the determination. "You've already done more than right by me," she whispered. "You've given me hope." Without thinking, she reached out and touched his cheek. Patrick went still under her hand, his eyes never leaving hers. For a moment they remained that way, connected by touch and something deeper. Then, slowly, Patrick covered her hand with his own. "I'll keep you safe, Olivia, for as long as you need." The moment passed, but something had shifted between them. As Olivia returned to her bed, she realized that for the first time since fleeing Dallas, she felt not just safe, but something akin to happiness. The next morning brought fresh snow and renewed tension. Patrick decided to visit the settlement to gather information about Jeremiah's whereabouts, leaving Olivia with strict instructions to stay inside and keep the door barred. "I'll be back before nightfall," he promised, checking his rifle before slinging it over his shoulder. "If I'm not, you will be," Olivia interrupted firmly. "Be careful, Patrick." He nodded, his eyes lingering on her face for a moment before he stepped out into the snow. The hours dragged by as Olivia tried to keep busy. She kneaded dough for bread, swept the floor, reorganized Patrick's meager supply of books. Anything to keep her mind from imagining terrible scenarios. Patrick confronting Jeremiah. Shots fired, blood on snow. Dusk was falling when she finally heard footsteps approaching. Olivia grabbed the rifle Patrick had left for her and positioned herself by the window. Relief flooded her when she saw his familiar figure emerging from the trees. She unbarred the door, but her smile faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" Patrick removed his hat, shaking off the snow. "He's in the settlement, staying at the boarding house. He's showing people a wedding photograph, offering $50 for information." Olivia sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak. "Did anyone recognize you, make the connection?" "No," Patrick assured her. "I'm just the trapper who comes in for supplies occasionally. No one would think to connect me to a runaway wife." He hesitated before adding, "I heard him talking. He said you tried to kill him in his sleep, that you're unstable." "That's a lie," Olivia cried. "He was choking me. I grabbed the knife from the bedside table to defend myself." "I know," Patrick said gently. "I believe you, remember." He moved to the fireplace, warming his hands. "From what I could gather, he's been traveling in a widening circle from Dallas, following rumors and false leads. He'll be in the settlement for a few more days at least before moving on. And if he doesn't move on, if he somehow finds this place," Patrick's expression hardened, "then I'll deal with him." "No," Olivia stood, crossing to him. "I won't have you putting yourself in danger for me. This is my fight." "Not anymore," Patrick replied, his voice low but firm. "Not since the night I found you." The intensity in his eyes made Olivia's breath catch. Without thinking, she placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart beating steadily beneath her palms. "I've never met anyone like you, Patrick Sloan," she whispered. His hands came up to cover hers. "Nor I you, Olivia Turner." The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable, as natural as the snow falling outside, as necessary as breath. Patrick's lips were warm against hers, gentle at first, then more insistent as she responded. His arms encircled her, pulling her close as if he could shield her from the world through sheer will. When they finally broke apart, Olivia rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the rapid beat of his heart. "I didn't plan for this," she murmured. Patrick tilted her chin up, his eyes serious. "Nor did I, but I can't say I'm sorry for it." "Neither am I," Olivia admitted. "But the timing, with Jeremiah so close." "All the more reason to hold on to what matters," Patrick replied. "I've spent 3 years in this cabin, Olivia, content enough with my solitude. But these past weeks with you have shown me what I was missing. Whatever comes, I don't regret a moment of it." That night they shared the narrow bed, their bodies finding comfort in each other's warmth. As snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in white, Olivia allowed herself to imagine a future beyond running, a future where she might find not just safety, but joy. Morning brought a stark reminder of reality. Patrick, checking the surroundings as he did each day, returned to the cabin with a grim expression. Tracks in the fresh snow about a mile south, a single rider moving carefully. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "Jeremiah, can't be sure, but we need to prepare." Patrick moved with controlled urgency, gathering essential supplies. "There's a hunting shelter about 4 miles north, built into the side of the ridge. You'll be safe there while I deal with this." "I'm not leaving you to face him alone," Olivia protested. "This isn't a discussion, Olivia." Patrick's tone brooked no argument as he packed food and blankets into a sack. "If it is your husband, he's looking for you, not me. I can handle one man." "And if he's not alone?" Olivia challenged. "What if he's brought others from Dallas?" Patrick paused. The tracks were of a single horse. "But even if there are others, my priority is keeping you safe." He took her hands in his. "Please, Olivia, let me do this for you." Reluctantly, Olivia agreed. Within minutes, they were heading north through the trees, Patrick leading the way, carefully brushing away their tracks as they went. The hunting shelter was little more than a lean-to built against a rock face, camouflaged by pine boughs, but it offered protection from the elements and was invisible from more than a few feet away. "Stay here," Patrick instructed, making sure she had the rifle. "If I'm not back by nightfall, there's a map in the pack showing the way to the next settlement. It's another 20 miles north, but you can make it in 2 days if the weather holds." Olivia clutched his arm. "Don't talk like that. You're coming back." Patrick kissed her fiercely. "Yes, I am. But I need to know you'll be safe if things go wrong." He pressed a small knife into her hand. "Just in case." With that, he was gone, moving silently through the trees, covering his tracks as he went. Olivia watched until his figure disappeared, then settled into the shelter to wait, the rifle across her knees. Hours passed with excruciating slowness. Olivia strained to hear any sound that might indicate what was happening back at the cabin, but there was nothing except the occasional cry of a winter bird or the soft thump of snow falling from branches. As the light began to fade, her anxiety grew. Patrick should have returned by now. Had Jeremiah found him? Were they locked in some deadly confrontation while she hid in the forest? Just as she had resolved to go looking for him, she heard the soft crunch of approaching footsteps. Olivia raised the rifle, aiming it at the trees where the sound originated. "It's me," Patrick's voice called softly before he appeared, his familiar silhouette a welcome sight against the darkening forest. Olivia lowered the weapon, relief washing over her. "What happened?" Patrick brushed snow from his coat before joining her in the shelter. "It wasn't your husband." "Just a trapper I know from the settlement, Henry Wilcox. He was following some animal tracks that led near our cabin." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I spoke with him. He had no idea anyone else was staying with me, and I kept it that way." Patrick looked exhausted but relieved. "But it's a reminder that we need to be more cautious. The settlement's still buzzing with talk of the reward your husband's offering." They spent the night in the hunting shelter, huddled together for warmth. Despite the cramped conditions and the lingering fear, Olivia felt safer in Patrick's arms than she ever had in her fine house in Dallas, With morning came a decision. "We can't stay here indefinitely," Patrick said as they made their way back to the cabin. "Sooner or later, someone will connect me to you, especially if your husband starts showing that photograph to more people." "Then we leave," Olivia said simply. "Together." Patrick looked at her with surprise. "You'd want that?" "I would." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I've been thinking about it all night. I came to these mountains running from something terrible, but now I'd be running towards something good. With you." A slow smile spread across Patrick's face. "I was going to suggest the same thing, but I wasn't sure you'd want a life with a simple cowboy." "A simple cowboy who saved my life," Olivia corrected, touching his cheek. "A man who showed me kindness when I needed it most." She hesitated, then added softly, "A man I've come to love." Patrick pulled her close, his kiss a promise in the cold morning air. "Then we'll go. Head west, maybe to Colorado or even California. Start fresh where no one knows either of us." The plan gave them purpose. Over the next few days they prepared for the journey, gathering supplies, repairing equipment, planning their route. Patrick traded with a neighbor for a second horse for Olivia, explaining he was expecting a partner for his spring trapping. They would leave in a week, as soon as the next storm passed. The anticipation filled Olivia with both excitement and trepidation. A new life awaited them, one free from Jeremiah's shadow. But fate had other plans. 4 days before their planned departure, Patrick returned from checking his traps with news that turned Olivia's blood to ice. "He's here," Patrick said without preamble as he burst through the door. "Your husband. He's at the Miller place, asking about a solitary trapper who lives in these parts." Olivia froze, the plate she'd been drying slipping from her fingers to shatter on the floor. "How did he find us?" "I don't think he has, not specifically. He's still searching, following rumors." "But he's close, Olivia, too close." Patrick began gathering their essentials. "We need to leave, now, tonight, in the dark, with a storm coming." Olivia glanced out the window where clouds were gathering, heavy with the promise of snow. "The storm will cover our tracks," Patrick explained. "And he won't expect anyone to travel in such conditions. It's our best chance." They worked quickly, packing only what they could carry on horseback. Food, ammunition, extra clothing, the money Olivia had taken from Jeremiah, and the small savings Patrick had accumulated. By dusk, they were ready to depart. "We'll head northwest," Patrick said, studying his map one last time by lantern light. "There's a pass through the mountains that should be passable even in winter. Once we're through, we'll be beyond his reach." As they stepped outside, the first snowflakes began to fall. Patrick helped Olivia mount her horse, a sturdy bay mare he'd named Sunny for her disposition. "Stay close to me," he instructed, swinging up onto his own gray gelding. "If we get separated in the storm, head for the North Star and keep moving." They set off into the gathering darkness, the snow quickly becoming a white curtain around them. Patrick led the way, occasionally checking his compass by the light of a carefully shielded lantern. The wind picked up, driving the snow horizontally into their faces despite the scarves wrapped around their heads. They had been traveling for perhaps 2 hours when the shot came, a sharp crack that cut through the howl of the wind. Olivia's horse reared in panic, nearly throwing her. Patrick wheeled around, his rifle already in his hands. "Get down," he shouted, as another shot splintered the bark of a tree near Olivia's head. She slid from the saddle, taking cover behind a fallen log. Patrick dismounted as well, moving to position himself between her and the direction of the shots. "Olivia." The voice that called her name sent shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "Jeremiah." "I know you're out there, wife," he continued, his voice carrying through the storm. "You've led me on quite a chase. Come out now, and perhaps I'll be merciful." Patrick signaled for Olivia to stay hidden, then moved silently through the trees, circling toward the sound of Jeremiah's voice. "And whoever's with her," Jeremiah called out, "this doesn't concern you. Leave now and you'll live to see morning." Olivia held her breath, straining to see through the swirling snow. She could make out Patrick's form, a shadow among shadows, moving with the stealth of a man who had hunted these woods for years. Another shot rang out, followed by the distinctive sound of a lever-action rifle being reloaded. Patrick dropped to the ground, then raised his own rifle. The exchange of gunfire was brief but terrifying. 3 shots in rapid succession, then silence. Olivia clutched the knife Patrick had given her, prepared to defend herself if Jeremiah appeared through the trees. "Olivia." Patrick's voice, low and urgent. "Come to me, quickly." She ran toward his voice, stumbling through the deep snow, heart pounding. Patrick was kneeling in a small clearing, his rifle still trained on a figure lying in the snow. Jeremiah Turner lay on his back, blood staining the snow beneath him a deep crimson. His rifle lay just beyond his outstretched hand. His eyes found Olivia's, hatred burning in them even as the light began to fade. "Faithless whore," he gasped, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "Should have killed you when I had the chance." "Is he?" Olivia couldn't finish the question. "Not yet," Patrick replied grimly, "but he will be soon. Chest wound." Jeremiah laughed, the sound turning into a gurgling cough. "You think this ends here? The law will hunt you both. They know I was tracking my runaway wife." "No," Patrick said calmly. "They know Jeremiah Turner was offering a reward for his missing wife. They know he rode into these mountains during a winter storm, against all advice, and now they'll know he met with a tragic accident in that storm." He looked at the falling snow already beginning to cover Jeremiah's body. "No one will find you until spring thaw, if at all, and by then we'll be long gone." Jeremiah's eyes widened slightly, recognizing the truth in Patrick's words. Then, with a final rattling breath, he was gone. Olivia stood frozen, staring at the man who had terrorized her for years, now still and harmless in the snow. She felt no grief, no guilt, only a profound relief that threatened to buckle her knees. "We need to move," Patrick said gently, taking her arm. "The horses scattered during the shooting. We'll have to proceed on foot until we find them." They left Jeremiah where he had fallen, the storm already doing the work of burying him. Patrick retrieved the dead man's rifle and ammunition resources they couldn't afford to leave behind, then continued covering their tracks as they moved through the night. The storm intensified, but they pushed onward, Patrick breaking trail through the deepening snow. By dawn, they had covered nearly 10 miles and located one of their horses, Sunny, Olivia's bay mare, sheltering in a stand of pines. They took turns riding, the other walking alongside as they continued their journey northwest. 3 days later, exhausted but alive, they reached the mountain pass Patrick had spoken of. From its summit, they looked back at the vast expanse of white-covered forest they had traversed, then forward to the valleys beyond to their future. "No one will find us now," Patrick said, his arm around Olivia's waist as they stood together on the promontory. "We can start fresh, just as we planned." "I'm still frightened," Olivia admitted. "Part of me expects to see him appearing through the trees, no matter what we saw." Patrick turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Jeremiah Turner is dead, Olivia, and the woman he terrorized, she died in that storm too." He touched her cheek softly. "From now on, you're just Olivia, my Olivia. And we'll build a life so good that the past won't be able to touch us." Olivia looked into his eyes, seeing the promise there, the unwavering commitment. "I believe you," she whispered, and realized it was true. In Patrick's arms, she had found not just safety but the possibility of joy. They continued their journey westward, eventually reaching a small settlement in Colorado Territory where Patrick found work at a local ranch. Olivia, with her education, secured a position teaching at the town school. They married quietly, with only the local minister and his wife as witnesses, becoming Patrick and Olivia Sloan. Spring came to the mountains, bringing with it new growth and the news they had been half expecting. A body discovered in the wilderness east of Dallas, presumed to be Jeremiah Turner, who had gone missing during the winter storms. The matter was considered closed, a tragic but not uncommon fate for those who underestimated the mountain winters. As the years passed, the small cabin Patrick built for them on the edge of town expanded, first with a proper kitchen where Olivia could bake the pies that became famous in the region, then with a nursery for their son James, born a year after their arrival. 2 years later came their daughter Emma, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's steady gaze. On winter nights, when snow fell thick around their home, Patrick would sometimes tell the children stories of a brave cowboy who rescued a princess in distress, covering her footprints in the snow so the evil wizard couldn't find her. Olivia would listen, meeting Patrick's eyes across the room, sharing in the private memory transformed into fairy tale. And on the anniversary of the night they had met, that fateful January evening, when Patrick had found her half frozen beneath an oak tree, they would walk together in the snow, deliberately leaving their tracks side by side in the pristine white, no longer afraid of being followed. 10 years after fleeing Dallas, Olivia stood on the porch of their home, watching Patrick teach 8-year-old James how to track rabbits in the fresh snow. Emma, 6 years old and fearless, danced around them, trying to catch snowflakes on her tongue. The scene filled Olivia's heart with a contentment she had once thought impossible. "Mama," Emma called, waving excitedly. "Come see what Papa's showing us." Olivia smiled and stepped off the porch, her boots crunching in the snow as she joined her family. Patrick looked up at her approach, his eyes crinkling at the corners just as they had the night they met. He had a few more silver strands in his hair now, new lines around his eyes, but his gaze still held the same warmth, the same unwavering devotion. "What's this important lesson?" Olivia asked, accepting Patrick's kiss as she reached them. "Papa's teaching us how to hide our tracks," James explained seriously. "He says it's an important skill." "Does he now?" Olivia raised an eyebrow at Patrick, who shrugged with a small smile. "Never know when it might come in handy," he said softly for her ears alone. "Look, Mama," Emma demonstrated, sweeping a pine bough over her footprints just as Patrick had done that night long ago. "I can make my tracks disappear. Very impressive," Olivia praised, ruffling her daughter's hair. "Your Papa is a good teacher." As the children continued practicing, Patrick slipped his arm around Olivia's waist, pulling her close against the winter chill. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly, a question he posed each year on this day. Olivia turned in his embrace, looking up into the face of the man who had not just saved her life, but had helped her build a new one filled with love and laughter and security she had once thought beyond her reach. "Not a single one," she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him as snowflakes danced around them. "Every step I've taken has led me exactly where I was meant to be." Later that night, with the children asleep and the house quiet except for the crackling of the fire, Patrick pulled out a small wooden box he kept on the mantel. From it, he removed a faded piece of paper, the map he had used to guide them through the mountains that stormy night. "I was thinking," he said, tracing the route they had taken with his finger, "that when the children are older we might journey east, visit my family in Missouri. They've been asking to meet you for years." Olivia considered this. The East had long represented her past something to flee from rather than return to. But now, secure in the life they had built together, she found the idea held no fear. "I'd like that," she said, leaning against his shoulder. "James and Emma should know their extended family." Patrick folded the map carefully, returning it to its box. "There's something else I've been meaning to ask you." He seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "The school board approached me about purchasing land for a new schoolhouse. With the town growing, they need something larger than the current building." Olivia nodded. The settlement had expanded considerably in recent years, bringing more families with school-age children. Her small classroom was becoming increasingly crowded. "They asked if we would consider selling part of our western acreage," Patrick continued. "It's the perfect location, close enough to town but with room to expand." He paused, watching her reaction. "I told them I'd discuss it with you. It would be your school, Olivia. You'd be the headmistress." Olivia sat up straight, surprised and touched that he had considered her feelings so carefully. "My own school," Patrick nodded. "You're the best teacher this town has ever had. Everyone says so. The board wants to name it after you, the Turner Academy." "No," Olivia said quickly, then softened at Patrick's startled expression. "Not Turner. That name belongs to the past." She smiled, taking his hand. "The Sloan Academy has a much better ring to it, don't you think?" Patrick's face broke into a wide grin. "I think it sounds perfect." As they sat together before the fire, planning this new chapter in their lives, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a terrified woman fleeing through a snowstorm to a respected teacher and beloved wife and mother, her transformation felt nothing short of miraculous. Yet it had begun with a simple act of kindness, a cowboy sweeping away her tracks in the snow, offering her protection when she needed it most. "What are you thinking about?" Patrick asked, noticing her contemplative mood. "About footprints," Olivia replied. "How sometimes the most important ones are those we choose to erase." Patrick squeezed her hand, understanding in his eyes. "And sometimes they're the ones we choose to make together." Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing their land in pristine white, a blank page upon which they would continue to write their story, step by step, day by day, no longer afraid of leaving their mark upon the world. In the spring of 1894, 16 years after that fateful winter night, the Sloan Academy opened its doors, welcoming children from throughout the growing community. Olivia stood proudly on the steps of the handsome two-story building, watching as her students filed in for the first day of classes. At her side was Patrick, as steady and supportive as ever, his hand warm against the small of her back. Their own children were nearly grown now. James, at 17, worked alongside his father on their ranch while studying with dreams of attending university in Denver. Emma, 15 and brilliant, assisted her mother at the school, showing a natural talent for teaching that mirrored Olivia's own. Mrs. Sloan called a small girl, running up with a handful of wildflowers. "These are for you." Olivia accepted the bouquet with a smile, bending to embrace the child. "Thank you, Sarah. They're beautiful." As the girl skipped away to join her classmates, Patrick leaned close to Olivia's ear. "You've come a long way from that terrified woman I found in the snow." Olivia turned to him, her eyes shining with emotion. "Thanks to you." "No," Patrick shook his head. "You had the courage to run that night, to leave everything behind and step into the unknown. I just helped smooth the path a little." The school bell rang, calling students and teachers alike to their classrooms. Olivia gave Patrick a quick kiss before heading inside, her steps confident and purposeful. As she took her place at the front of her classroom, looking out at the eager young faces before her, she felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. That evening, as was their custom on special occasions, Olivia and Patrick rode out to a hill overlooking their property. The land stretched before them, their ranch, the new school in the distance, the town beyond. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and gold. "I received a letter today," Patrick said as they sat side by side on a fallen log, "from the sheriff in Dallas." Olivia stiffened slightly. Even after all these years, mentions of her former home could still evoke unease. "What did it say?" "Jeremiah's brother died last month." Apparently, he'd been searching for information about what happened to Jeremiah all these years. Patrick took her hand, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her palm. "The sheriff wrote to inform me, as the person who reported finding Jeremiah's belongings during that spring thaw." "Does he suspect anything?" Olivia asked quietly. Patrick shook his head. "No, the letter was merely a courtesy, letting me know the case was officially closed. Jeremiah Turner has been legally declared dead for years, but his brother had kept pushing for answers." He paused, then added gently, "It's over, Olivia, truly over." Olivia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "It feels strange to know that chapter is finally completely closed." "Are you all right?" Patrick asked, studying her face with concern. Olivia considered the question, taking stock of her feelings. There was relief, certainly, a sense of finality, but not grief, not regret. "Yes," she said firmly, "I'm more than all right." They sat in companionable silence as the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky. In the growing darkness, Patrick pointed to a particular cluster of stars just becoming visible. "The North Star," he said softly. "Do you remember what I told you that night in the storm? If we got separated, head for the North Star and keep moving," Olivia finished. "I remember everything about that night, Patrick. Every word, every moment." Patrick smiled, pulling her close against his side. "So do I. Especially the moment I realized I'd found something I hadn't even known I was looking for." As they rode back to their home in the gentle spring evening, Olivia reflected on how fate had worked in mysterious ways. A desperate flight through a snowstorm had led her not to disaster, but to salvation. A cowboy covering her tracks had ultimately helped her forge a new path, forward, one marked by love rather than fear, by choice rather than necessity. Their story had begun in winter's harsh embrace, but it had blossomed in all seasons since, through spring renewals and summer abundance, through autumn harvests and back to winter's quiet contemplation. Year upon year, they had built their life together, creating memories that would endure long after they were gone. And as they approached their home, where lamplight glowed warmly in the windows and their children waited, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that every footprint in the snow, both those revealed and those concealed, had led her precisely where she belonged.